So last week I wasted an entire afternoon trying to print this just stupid negative. I mean, the lighting in the scene was good, the composition, I liked it, but the negative, it was just unprintable. And here's the thing, I really thought I had done everything correctly. I mean, when I shot the image, it felt really good. I metered the scene correctly. I applied the filter factor for the filter that I was using, you know, according to the standard advice. But that's the thing. The negative came back thin because I relied on that, you know, kind of generic standard filter factor instead of actually looking at the light and reading the light. And after decades and decades of shooting, I've learned that there's certain situations that just require more exposure than what the standard filter factor is gonna give you. And today I'm gonna break down what scenes and when this actually happens, as well as what filters actually matter for black and white film photography, and a really simple field test that I use that has just eliminated this problem altogether. Because the difference between this print and this print is exactly one stop. That's it. So let me show you what I mean. And I see this happening over and over again. Photographers will apply a filter, shoot it, and one time their images will turn out fine. It'll work out perfectly. But then the next time their negatives come back like super underexposed, or something just doesn't go according to plan. And it's really confusing and kind of can be hard to figure out. So what's actually happening? Colored filters pass their own color light and block the light on the other side of the spectrum. So for instance, red filters will let red light pass while they block the blue and green spectrum. Orange filters will pass orange light but block more of the blue light. So the result is that colors similar to your filter get slightly brighter on the final print, and colors opposite the filter on the color wheel get slightly darker. But here's what the filter factors aren't going to account for. If you're shooting with a warm filter during the day, say an orange or a red, the sun is not directly warming up those shadows. The shadows are being lit more by the blue sky, and so there's just a lot of blue in the shadow areas. And that's the exact wavelength that your filter is blocking. So you're kind of getting hit twice because your filter is absorbing a lot of the blue light. So the shadows are already kind of underexposed because they're actually in the shade. So like I said, that's when the actual published filter factors, they're just gonna fail you because they're not taking into account that extra subtraction that's happening at those times. And your film simply isn't getting enough exposure in the shadows. And by the time you have your negatives in the darkroom, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. Basically, it's too late. And film, as you know, certainly isn't getting any cheaper, so every underexposed piece of film is kind of just wasted money. So let me show you exactly when this happens and how to fix it. The time when you're gonna need the most compensation typically is gonna be roughly around 11 a.m. to say 3 p.m., just depending on the time of the year. This is when the sun's gonna be high in the sky and the shadows are dominated by the blue skylight. The shadows are gonna have a lot of blue in them. And if you're using a warm orange or red filter, you're gonna have to most likely give more exposure than what the manufacturer is recommending. So here's what I typically do. If I'm shooting and there's a lot of blue light, it's midday, and I can tell there's a lot of blue light in the shadows. If I'm using an orange filter, I will go with the manufacturer's recommended factor and then add about a half stop light more on top of that. And with a red filter, generally about a full stop more. And the difference it makes is, well, more printable shadows and just overall more depth in your images. So now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, can't I just overexpose my film? And you can, and sometimes that's even the right move. But if you don't fundamentally understand what's going on here, what's gonna happen is one time you're gonna get a solid exposure that's right on, the next time it's gonna be underexposed, and then the next time you're gonna be way overexposed. So breaking this down and understanding like I said, fundamentally what's happening is the key to getting consistent results with your filters. That's really what separates intentional work from lucky accidents. So now that you have an idea of what's fundamentally going on, let's go over what filters actually matter for black and white film photography. So let's start with yellow filters. They're gonna be your everyday tool. They slightly darken blue skies, reduce haze, and lighten greens for a really nice natural look. The filter factor is generally about 2x, or that's about 1 stop more exposure needed, and that's to start. Yellow filters can be great for portraits, documentary shooting, and just black and white photography in general. Now, orange filters are where things start to get interesting. They dramatically darken skies, lighten warm colored subjects like stone and sand, and cut through haze. Their typical filter factor is around 3 to 4x, so that's roughly 1.5 stops to 2 stops more exposure that you're gonna need to start. But this is where you really have to start watching your shadows. Like in midday light, I usually give about 1/2 stop more exposure than what my meter is telling me based on the manufacturer's factor. Next, we have red filters. These are the most powerful contrast filters that we can use. They can turn blue skies nearly black and leave clouds brilliant and white, giving great separation. And the red filter's filter factor is generally around 8x or 3 stops. But in heavily blue lit shadows, this can cost you another stop or so. And here's my honest take after decades of printing in the darkroom. The red filter can honestly ruin more shots than any other filter. So if we take this image of the museum, you can see that it's technically okay, but if you look close, the shadows are just getting blocked up. It's a little bit over dramatic and crushed to the point that it looks a little heavy and artificial. The shadows lack detail and the midtones are missing. So take the same image with an orange filter. It's still pretty dramatic and it has like a lot of separation between the clouds and the sky and the foreground, but it's more believable. It's a bit more printable because it has more open shadows and a full tonal range. Now don't get me wrong, red filters definitely have their place, like western skies, whenever you want that real dramatic separation in the clouds and sky. You know, a lot of architectural work will work really well with a red filter, especially when you want maximum contrast. But for everyday shooting, orange is gonna give you like 90% of the drama with half the risk of wasting film. So now that we've covered all that, let me show you a simple test that's gonna basically eliminate all the guesswork for you. So you can run this simple test in an hour or two with 1 roll of film. And after that, you're never really gonna be wondering if you're correctly exposing or not for your filters. And once you run this test, you're gonna have a lot more confidence that you're correctly exposing with the filters that you're using. So you're gonna wanna try to do this test between 11 and 3 p.m. on a clear day, because you want that maximum blue light to be in your shadows when you're testing. So you're gonna pick a scene with good shadow detail, nothing too contrasty, just something average and outdoor that actually represents what you actually shoot. And you're gonna wanna put your camera on a tripod. This is gonna simply help you make every frame identical. Also make sure that you have a pen and paper, or you could use, say, your notes app or something on your phone, because you're gonna wanna make sure you record every setting for this test. So for the first frame, you're gonna shoot this at your normal ISO with no filter, because this is gonna be your baseline. Now for the next frame, you're gonna put the filter on your camera lens. For this filter, you're gonna use the recommended filter compensation factor and shoot it just like that, exposing with that factor. Now, if you're metering through the lens and the filter, let the camera do the compensation. If you're using a handheld meter, you're gonna have to manually change the ISO to account for that compensation. Take the shot, write down your settings and frame number. Frame number 3, you're gonna do the same thing, but add 1/2 stop more and shoot it. Frame number 4, you're gonna add another 1/2 stop more and shoot it. So that's it, 3 filtered frames with the unfiltered image as your baseline. And now you can move on and repeat this with your other filters if you want to. Now, after you have your film developed, you're gonna want to make a contact sheet. And to do this, you're gonna make an exposure that gives you a maximum black for your paper through the film base. And after you have that contact sheet made, it's gonna become immediately apparent which exposure compensation was correct for your filters. Because you're simply comparing the filtered images to the unfiltered baseline. So you're gonna look at those shadows, and whatever shadow detail matches, that's the correct compensation you should be using for the filter. After you've done this test, you're gonna know that you're getting enough exposure through your filters so that you can print good shadow detail, and you're no longer guessing. You have a real solid understanding of what you need to do when. And bottom line is you're gonna stop wasting expensive film that when developed, the shadows are just way too thin. Now, most photographers are gonna stop here. They're gonna run the test, get the numbers, and think that they're finished. But there's kind of a huge mistake that can ruin this entire approach. And that is you really have to think about what lighting you are shooting in when you're out there shooting. So running this test at midday when there's a lot of blue light around is kind of gonna give you a more optimal setting for your general all-around shooting like settings. But I have to tell you, I was recently out in Wyoming shooting where the elevation is a lot higher than where I'm at here in Wisconsin. We were out there scouting for our community meetup that's gonna take place out there next year. And Doug had mentioned to me that sometimes in high altitudes, you actually need to add more exposure to your film. And I really didn't think too much about it when he said it, but then I looked into it a little bit more, and sure enough, when I finally got home, developed the negatives, they were thinner than I anticipated them being. And so I dug into this a little bit more, and there's a good reason behind it, and it's really changed how I approach using filters altogether. So here's what's happening at high altitude and why that matters for us. So at sea level, the atmosphere filters and scatters light. But at 7,000 to 8,000 feet, there's less atmosphere above you. And that means the blue component in skylight becomes even stronger, more intense and more pure. And in the shade, those shadows are dominated almost entirely by that blue skylight. So in this instance, using an orange or a red filter was blocking even more light out of the shadows than it would, say, if I was at sea level. And this can apply to other conditions as well. If it's like right after a storm and everything is like overly blue, you're gonna wanna add more exposure. So the test I showed you is gonna give you a really solid baseline, like I said, but reading the light and understanding when conditions get a bit more extreme, that's what really lets you adapt. And once you can wrap your head around and understand like this concept, your negatives are just gonna have a much fuller tonal range, especially when using the deeper filters, than if you flew blindly with a manufacturer's recommendation. That's why understanding the light matters, understanding and doing that simple test matters, and knowing when to add an extra stop of light really matters. Don't think of this as being so much technical as intentional. And this kind of adaptive understanding is exactly what we developed throughout Unlock the Darkroom. You learn the principles behind the process, not just formulas to follow. You can check it out in the description. So if you take one thing from this video, make it this. Filter factors are starting points, not answers. They're based on average conditions that rarely exist when you're actually out shooting. But most real scenes aren't average at all. Your shadows may be completely lit by blue light. You might have a ton of atmospheric haze and other things going on, or your subject just might be completely dominated by one color. It's important that you understand and have a system for dealing with these things when they come up. And one last note on compensation, the numbers that I get from my test to where I'm at with my film and my equipment will most likely be different from your numbers. And that's exactly how it should be. The goal isn't to follow someone else's system, it's to understand what's happening with the light, test your own materials, and expose for the full tonal range you want to capture. So if you do that, your negatives are gonna be dense, printable, and full of that detail you saw when you're actually out taking that shot. And if this was helpful and you want the complete system, everything from testing your materials to making exhibition quality creative prints, check out Unlock the Darkroom. It really is the structured workflow I wish I had in the beginning when I started. Links in the description.